Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah, we have taken some example in the previous videos of how we're going to develop an integrated format for Pi-CBT in terms of depression. The first example. Today I'm going to give you some more example in terms of anxiety and its related spectrum. So basically, if we look at anxiety, you can see that we have, this is from our book, Positive Islamic Psychology, a Transcendent Model to Achieve Peace, Happiness and Success in the 21st Century. You go back to chapter 7 and you can see this whole material, and then inshallah from there you can then work out from this example how you're going to develop your own methodology in using positive Islamic cognitive behavior therapy. Using the background is always back to CBT. So if you look at this idea, we are talking about anxiety disorder may indicate a person has experienced some of the following symptoms. So in your introduction to your client or whoever, whether it's a student or a teenager or a child, each of them has different parameters. So these parameters are questionnaires. You can go to the internet. There's a lot of questionnaire that is available online. So you can go online, for example, even anxiety for maths exam. You can go and Google, and there will be some sort of test in which you can do online, and then that will give you some idea about the problem, to be very specific. Even children, for example, separation anxiety disorder, they have this questionnaire which you can use, but I'm going to give you a broad overview and maybe take one or two of this questionnaire for discussion so that we expand. All right, the capability in which empirical research in terms of CBT will be added with the value system of positive Islamic cognitive behavior therapy approach. So even our questionnaire, we will have to reframe, but for the time being, we use it, and when we have a team of researchers working for us at our positive Islamic psychology cognitive behavior therapy center or PIP centers throughout the world, we'll then be able to do more research and create our own very cultural specific, that means religion specific and cultural specific questionnaires based on positive Islamic cognitive behavior therapy. So if you look at the anxiety disorder, it indicates some sort of experience. So in your questionnaire, you have certain areas in which you have to elicit from that person, your client or the person who is being given counseling, the feeling of restlessness or feeling on the edge. And it's always on the edge. They're feeling, so what level? So it is, for example, a scale of 1 to 5, what level they have. Is it very intense or not? All right. Secondly, inability to control feelings of anxiety. There's always on the edge feeling of anxiety. So their anxiety about things normally is going to happen in the future that they become fearful of. Difficulty in connecting or inability to focus on any other task because of their constant automatic thoughts and inner speech, and the feeling of anxiety, the stress that is generated from that, they become very difficult in doing their, for example, the task that is given to them in their job. So their performance at job, their productivity will drop, and their ability to communicate with their colleague also will drop, and in certain cases they will just cry or just shout, whatever the mechanism, escapism that they will have to try to do because of their inherent, very deep anxiety. Short temper, frustration, irritability. So even simple question of they not doing a certain task with a work group, whether it is in a factory or in a company or within their family, they will get very irritated and very angry and very emotional. Muscle tension, so they are tense up. So you can do some muscle tests. There are certain way in which you can use kinesiology. You can actually measure their muscle tension. Then disturbed sleep pattern. That means if you analyze their sleeping pattern, you'll find it's highly disturbed. And now you can use EEG, and then you can connect. And there are also some software which you can buy to use with your mobile that you can actually measure your sleeping pattern. So these are all tools available now, which is very fantastic. Those days you got to go to a clinic or a hospital to get all that done. Now you can connect yourself at home, and then you can more or less have certain ideas what is your sleeping pattern. So if a person feels anxious all the time over a prolonged period of time, in the absence of any above additional factor, this may also include other form of anxiety disorder, for example, like panic attack. All right, so panic attack, sometimes it doesn't show the symptom, but sometimes it becomes reoccurrence because of the reminiscence of the panic situation that they face, maybe in childhood, maybe in teenager, maybe in an accident, maybe in sexual abuse or whatever that they have gone through. It becomes a reminiscence. It played back from long drawn memory, is suddenly trigger a panic attack. So sudden attack, intense fear or feelings of impending doom, shortness of breath and chest pain. So there are many forms of the spectrum of anxiety disorder. We have agoraphobia, that is fear of a situation. There could be fear of height, fear of people, fear of community, fear of a meeting, fear of being in a canteen even, fear of noise, traffic noise, and so on. So they are very specific agoraphobia that you will see in terms of that situation, and they create a panic attack or panic-like symptom. Usually accompanied by feelings of anxiety and depression. So this is quite common nowadays, especially children, also teenagers. They have a lot of this kind of problem nowadays, in which you know, the level is getting quite epidemic in the sense. Okay, then you have specific phobia. Specific phobia could be, you know, fear of snakes, fear of you know, disappropriate. Then you have social phobia. All right, OCD and post-PTSD. So I'll give you some detail later on these things. So what are the risk factor in anxiety disorder? The risk factor in anxiety disorder, first is repressed feelings. That means you repress your inner feelings because of some trigger. Whatever that trigger, it is very important for you to then slowly, as a counselor or as a teacher or as a life coach, to find what triggers that whole mechanism, and then find to a shaping process through continuous long-term ideation of a better outcome to overcome that problem. So for example, pushing oneself, thinking about the negative self, uncomfortable, unpleasant feelings, avoiding argument, taking embarrassing, worrying things. So all these things are repressed. You just become numb or dumb, or find a way of escapism. So when that happens, it will build up. It's just like a volcano waiting for a time to just boom, explode. All right. So these repressed feelings occurs for everybody. Every one of us have certain unpleasant repressed feelings, and no one is perfect. So that's why I always say that when we are going to be a counselor or a teacher or a life coach, remember, we are also imperfect beings. So always have mercy, compassion, love, and understanding, so that whatever they're going through, maybe we ourselves have gone through certain episodes in our life of the similar situation, whether it is depression, mild depression, maybe even severe depression, anxiety about certain things in our life, especially when we are going, for example, like facing an exam, or being retrenched in a job, and so on, how to lead a life, and so on. All those you may have gone through. I have gone through some of those things. So I can relate to those kind of situation, because as we go through life, we'll go through many, many things, and from there we can learn, a lesson learned from this situation, how not to make it disappropriate to the actual situation. Personality type, this include coping, social support mechanism, exposure, and then coping style, including positive or negative thinking, habits, addiction, and so on. So a lot of them, sometimes the coping style is now always slanted towards addiction, whether it is chemical addiction or alcoholic addiction, or even now they go on online addiction, all kind of addiction. And some people just go play online game hours after hours after hours, and in some cases their escapism is to play the online game, and in some cases they even die playing online game, which is ridiculous, but that is already happening. Large numbers of people who are already hospitalized, and quite a number of them die playing video games for maybe more than 48 hours. Okay, so you also have to know what are the social support available in terms of the self, the social contract within the family, all right, the neighborhood, family, colleagues, friends, and so on, how this play out in that person's life. All right, some of them are deficient. They're having a very difficult time because of the dysfunctional, for example, family system, which is now breaking up very, very fast. So they are creating a lot of anxiety, especially among the young people, the children, the teenagers. So sometimes to overcome that situation, they just go into a very deep depression and very deep anxiety, panic attack situation, in which then they will start failing in their exams or school and so on, and then they will all blame this back to their mother or father or whatever is the cause. Family history research show anxiety disorder runs in family, and that fear could be encoded in our gene. But remember, when we say about that is encoded in our gene, remember, within our framework, our genetic system, we have epigenetics. It could be a possibility, but you also have neural plasticity. So if you are able to intervene, then the gene that gives you this idea of anxiety may not be manifested and will not be manifested. So you lead a very normal life. So it is very important to intervene even though there is a genetic predisposition. All right, stress, this is well known now. There's so many research on stress that causes anxiety disorder. So when we talk about stress, we have to understand that we need a certain level of stress. Life is always stressful. I mean, you cannot say that you can have zero stress. You only have zero stress when you are dead. All right? Even you are sleeping, you have stress, because people with stress cannot sleep well. So when they cannot sleep well, the whole cycle, the vicious cycle of cannot sleep well, more stress, more imbalance, chemical imbalance in terms of the hormone, more panic attack, more fear, more worry, and it goes on and on. This is the cycle of a vicious cycle of developing a disorder in terms of anxiety or OCD and the rest. So what's important is that fear, anxiety automatically trigger a number of physical changes, because when we have fear, we have our fight or flight response. Remember the three systems that I was telling you, the drive system, the soothing system, and the threat system, how they are actually working. So for fight and flight response, the body will make no distinction whether it is real, whether you really see a real situation of a tiger going to attack you, all right, or you see a situation in which the stress could be a response to this exertional living in the modern world. All right, for example, stress of no money. That's a big stress. People living on the edge because they are living from hand to mouth. So every day is stressful for them. How they're going to feed their children, how this, how that, and they explode. All right, so there are a lot, millions, maybe billions of people who are living below the poverty line. They are really stressful because where is the next meal coming in? All right, so these are situational conditions that maybe if we talk about the injustice of this world, it is something beyond us. But don't be sad about it, because whatever we do, we have to be positive to help what is nearest to us, what we can do. For example, if there is famine in the Sahara, if we can help to a certain amount by giving donation, that's the best we can. But then if people are dying by the thousands or by the hundreds of thousands, it is the responsibility of the world leaders. All right, but we are not world leaders, but we can help to alleviate those kind of situations. So some are existential stresses that beyond you and I, but we try to do what is within our capacity. So once we know that stress to a certain extent is not bad, if a certain amount of stress will give us a sub-edge to our performance, especially when performing in our company, performing in our career and so on, we need stress. We need to be an achiever. So I have another group of videos. You can go to Islamic Motivation PIP. You go to YouTube, Islamic Motivation PIP. There I list out the whole framework of how we Muslims can be achievers. So when we become achievers, we want to achieve something. Naturally, there will be certain conditions. For example, to be productive. To be achievers, you must be productive. So how to be productive when you are always anxious, always depressed, and always not able to do the task given to you? So this is where we have to look at it. All right? So the primary stress hormone, cortisol, is very important. This is for our fight and flight response, and it affects our body, including the heart, lungs, circulation, immune system, and other stress hormones include adrenaline and noradrenaline. So stress is important for human survival. Too little stress will not give you the challenge. All right? And when there's too much stress, that also is not good. So we must find a balance. That's why in positive Islamic psychology, we must find a balance. That's why I was always saying that we must have the SEMP integration, spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical integration. So when we are able to do that balance, because Allah tells us over in the Quran that He has created us in a just balance. This whole universe is in a just balance. Our life, our nafs is so much in a just balance. So how to get that just balance is what we must do as a Muslim, as a person who is going to help others. So we are slowly building up this for ourselves, for our family, and then for our client and friends. And inshallah, over time, we would be able to develop a society that has less anxiety, full of peace, happiness, and success, inshallah. Always striving to make themselves good, helping others to be good, making the world good, inshallah.